Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Age Better. I'm so happy to welcome Melissa Davey to the show. Hello, Melissa. Welcome to Age
Hello.
Better.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
We have a lot of things to talk about, so I really want to
Okay.
get into it. I mean, you're a badass, and I'm so happy to have you on the show and talking about what a badass you are. So, your early career, you were deeply involved in advocacy. I mean,
Yeah,
really doing good work on
right.
behalf of people and legal services for disabled children and individuals, right? What
Yes.
drew you to that field initially, and how if it has, how has that experience helped you in your new field
Okay.
of
Well,
filmmaking?
and this is way, way back. We're talking about, 1970s.
Hmm.
Um, and I joined legal services. I'm very, always have been very interested in equality for everybody and
Hmm.
helping the underdog. And, a lot of my early work, I thought I was going to be a teacher, and then I was like, it just didn't fit me. And I got involved in legal services, which was one of the best 12 years that I've ever spent with an incredible organization of attorneys and paralegals that did phenomenal work. And so I learned about disability there, and I learned about education, laws for children who needed special education in the school system, and the schools really weren't following it then. So it was doing a lot of advocacy for those individual children to get them what they needed. And that was just always my goal, is to help people who were less, advantaged get something that they deserved and that they should have. So it just
Hmm.
made sense to me. And I love storytelling. So from the beginning of time, I've liked to listen to other people's stories and create stories. And when you're advocating for somebody, you're creating a story about them, and you're telling that story to an administrative level individual, trying to get the benefits that you need for them. So it it just filled myself with good feelings around being able to tell a story in a way that would help somebody, and to
Hmm.
listen to, and really listen to somebody and hear how difficult their lives might be and what they might need, and kind of opening my mind to trying to put myself in that position and wondering what it would be like if I didn't have somebody help me, if I was,
Hmm.
on the other side of the table. So that became my focus for a very, very long time. And I became an expert in the field of Social Security disability law, and, within that practice. And then I was recruited to the for-profit world. So I'm leaving the nonprofit world to the for-profit world to build a Social Security disability, kind of like a little mini law firm within this risk management company, which was national in scope. So to build that to offer to the insurance carriers that were representing and covering individuals who were disabled. And some of them become disabled to the point where they can't go back to work, and that's when Social Security would come in. And we would represent those individuals before the Social Security Administration. And that had been one of my areas of expertise in the nonprofit world. So I brought that into the for profit world. And again, what was I doing in that job? Even though I was creating the business and running the business, I had done about 1,000 hearings for people with disabilities. And that, again, you're telling the story of the individual, and you're gathering the evidence you need to tell the story in a way that's going to, get them the benefits that they deserve. So again, listening to stories and telling stories. It started when I was very young, and I was, did that through, I guess I think I left, I'm trying to, the calendar starts getting fuzzy at this point, but
Oh,
I
does it
left
ever?
my job about 8 years ago. So I left the corporate world 8 years ago to do
Got
my
it.
next gig, which is what I'm
So it
doing
sounds
now.
like the skills that you were really developing during all of those years working in that field, both not for profit and then for profit, really did inform your ability to kind of carry those skills over to
Yeah.
filmmaking, because that is telling a story on just on a
Yes.
different kind of a grander scale in a different way, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, and it's been such a stable point in my life, that knowing that, okay, I can listen to a story and then I can relate it again to someone
Mm-hmm.
else in a way that's necessary at the moment. But I'm just invested in people's stories. I love to hear them. It doesn't matter whether I'm making a film or not. I'm still seeking out people's stories and listening to them, because every time I hear a story, I might challenge the way I think about something. They may bring
Mm-hmm.
up a subject or an issue that I feel strongly about, and potentially they could change the way that I think about that issue. Maybe not, but at least I'm getting this kind of worldwide view of whatever it is that we're talking about, and hopefully challenging myself to listen to what they're saying and see how it resonates with me. And did I learn something new? And I would tell you that at least 50% of the time when I'm talking with somebody, I learn something new, at
That's
least
incredible.
50%.
I mean, when you think about especially what's going on in the world today and how we're really not stopping and paying attention to what other opinions might be, or what the other side is saying, what their perspective is. And that's a skill set that I think I wish more of us did have and
Yeah,
use,
right.
to be more empathetic, and to really understand the other side, other
Yeah.
positions. So talk
And I
to us
have
about.
used that
Mhm,
lately, with, the political world the way it is. I have
mhm,
gotten a little bit better in at least listening to people that don't believe things that I believe.
mhm.
And it
Not always
really,
easy.
it's not easy, but when
Mm-mm.
you can come to understand why somebody feels the way they do, you're able to empathize with them at a certain level. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, what was that moment in time? There had to have been some moment in your life that you said, I am ready to pivot over from this
Mhm.
corporate world to the world, more creative world of filmmaking. What was
Yeah.
that moment? And I'm sure it wasn't easy, although maybe it was actually. You tell us, and maybe a little scary, or maybe not. Tell us, Melissa, what
Yeah, I
happened? When did this pop into your head, and what was the next step you took?
well, there were a series of things that came together. The first one being, I looked at the calendar and I realized I was 65 years old, and I was sitting at this desk that I'd been at for more than 2 decades, loving my job, no reason to leave. I could have stayed till I was 90. There was no ageism within the company, which was wonderful. But looking at that calendar and saying, oh my gosh, how all of a sudden did I become 65? And it just started I don't know, it was like a reel going through my head, like, what are you doing? Are you going to stay here? Are you going to stay another? And then the CEO, that I reported to the CEO, and he came to me and he said, oh, we're being bought out again by another private equity firm. And I'd been through that rodeo a few times, so I knew what it entailed. And I knew that they were going to ask me to sign up for another 5 years. So that's happening while I'm sitting there at 65 saying, oh, what am I doing? What am I doing? So that prompted me to say, do I really want to be sitting here at 70, doing the same thing? And the answer was no. You've done
Hmm.
it. You've done it well. You're good at it. You can do it in your sleep. You like it. That's okay. But what haven't you done? So I was asking myself, what haven't you done that you've really always kind of fantasized about? And I started making a list. And on that list were, crazy things like play a saxophone. And I say that's crazy because I don't read music, but I would love to play the saxophone
And you
of
still
all the
can.
instruments. I just love that instrument. But then I
Hmm.
thought, well, how reasonable is it to think that I can learn to read music plus play the thing in a short period of time? I wanted something that I could jump into right away. So I moved that down on the list. And then the usuals. Well, I could write a book, or, you know, have a little store with beautiful art items, And I was like, I don't think so. And film. You need to know that film, since I was 9 years old, has always been a fantasy. And I say a fantasy because I went to the movies a lot as a youngster and all through my life. And I used to be so curious about, how did they make that look so real? And, how did they do this? Gee, I wish I could be on the set with a director and see what they're doing. So that one kept coming up on the list. And then one more thing happened. I was at work. I was in DC for a congressional meeting about Social Security, and which I've been to dozens of those over the decades. And I was sitting there, it was early in the morning, and I did my little piece. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, this is like Groundhog Day. We never get moving forward on any of these issues. And it just was like, it hit me like, I've had it with this. I don't want to do this part anymore. And I leaned over to a friend. I said, I'm going home early. I'm not going to stay for the day. So I came back up. I'm in Pennsylvania. And I decided not to go back to work that day. And instead, I called a friend, a younger friend, who said to me, my gosh, I haven't seen you in ages. Yeah, come on over. Let's have, late lunch, and then we'll go pick up her daughter from school and take her up to the horse barn where she worked after school. And I said, oh, that sounds like heaven right now. So that's what we did. We picked up Grace, we took her up the dirt road, and as we were driving, my friend said, I think they're making a movie over there. Look over there. So I looked as we drove by, and I thought, sure enough, looks like a movie set. And we came back and we stopped. We're on a dirt road in the middle of the woods in Chester County, Pennsylvania. And I said, I bet I know who it is. And she was like, oh, come on. How could you know who it is? Like, well, look where we are. Chester County, PA. Looks kind of spooky. I bet it's M. Night Shyamalan, because this is where he lives, and this is where he makes his crazy movies. So I looked it up on the phone and pulled up his website, and a picture of where we were sitting came up. And it said, M. Night Shyamalan making a micro-budget film in Chester County, Pennsylvania. And I said, well, that's him. And there was a
Melissa,
little red
that's really incredible.
Yeah, but it gets even weirder. It gets weirder.
Okay, keep going.
On the screen, there's a little red button that says Charity Buzz. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. So I hit it. Boom. Picture of his face. It's Win a Day on the Set with M. Night Shyamalan. So my friend is like, oh, you have to do this. So I started betting. All of the money was going to go to his education fund. He had a foundation which does amazing things in education worldwide. So I was interested in that, so I could justify, if I'm going to start putting money into this, okay, it's going to a good cause. So I started bidding, and it seemed to be neck and neck with this dentist in New Jersey. He wanted it, I wanted it, and for 2 weeks we bid, and at the end I won. I won the day on the set.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And
so
within
what happened?
two weeks after that, after signing all the NDAs, I was on the set with M. Night Shyamalan when he was making his movie The Visit. And the day of the filming was at the Amtrak station, South, 30th Street station in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And it said, report there at 7 a.m., plan on 10 hours, blah, blah, blah. So I went there thinking, well, he's going to sit me in a chair and I'm going to see what they do. This is going to be great. So as soon as I got there, it was boom. I was behind the camera with him all day. I was with all the crew. I was able to ask questions. He was asking me what I thought about how he was setting a shot. It was incredible. Like, I had not been that excited about anything in a very, very long time. And I realized that, my God, this is fascinating. And so we sat together at lunch for a break, and he said, what do you do? And he's younger, and I was and he's done nothing but make films his whole life. So I was trying to explain the risk management, insurance, Social Security, and he kind of glazed over. And he looked at me and he goes, what do you really want to do? And I said, oh, I want
Good
your
question.
job. I said, I want your job. And he said, oh, well, you better hurry up. And he was kidding, but it hit me, that gut punch that I felt physically. I felt it. And I thought, he's absolutely right. If I'm going to do anything different, I need to hurry up. I'm 65 at the time. I was like, if I want to make a film, I guess I better do it now.
Right.
So the rest of the day went on, and it was fabulous, wonderful. Came home late at night, walked in the door, And my husband said, so how was it? Because he knew how excited I was. I said, it was beyond anything that I imagined it would be. And tomorrow I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to make a movie. So my
Wow.
husband
All
kind
I
of,
can say is, wow.
yeah,
Wow.
and
And
he,
what
that's,
was
I
your
think,
husband's reaction?
I think he said, wow. And he just kind of looked at me a little curiously, like, is she,
Are you
what
sure
is
about
going
this?
on? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so he said, okay. And he just sort of left it at that. And I went to bed and I stayed up half the night because I was thinking. I was thinking, well, what could I do? What kind of a film? Now that I've said it out loud, I have to do this. So then I
Yes.
was like, made a
Isn't that something
commitment.
how that
Yeah,
works? Mm-hmm.
yes. So the next day, I went in to the CEO and I said, well, just FYI, I'm going to give a long notice because I have to mentor somebody to run this division that I built for the company. But I am leaving. I'm not going to do the 5-year sign up. And he said, okay, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to make a movie. And he looked, and he'd known me for years. And he just said, that sounds about right. So, I went back to work, but I immediately began planning what I was going to do for a film and how I was going to do it. So I had the time and the luxury of being paid while I was developing this so that when I walked out the door, it was already in progress. And I'm so thankful for having that time to be
That was
able
the
to set
perfect
that up.
setup, Melissa. That was the
Yeah.
perfect setup. So your documentary, your first, I believe
Yes.
your first, Beyond 60,
Yes.
wonderful film.
Thank you.
It's been a significant success and has resonated with many, of course, especially in my age group.
Yes.
What inspired you to have that be your very first documentary film?
Well, as soon as I said I was going to be a filmmaker, I thought, oh man, that's a big word, filmmaker. And what does it really mean? And what would I be able to do that makes sense for me? And it was, well, right away, documentary is a story. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to write a script. I'm not going to try to figure out how to write a script and do that type of film. But a documentary made sense because it seemed like the most simple way to step out because I understand how to listen to people's stories and tell their stories. Maybe it was in a different, genre at work, but I thought, well, I think I could do this. And then I thought, well, what kind of stories would I want to tell? And immediately it came to me, well, it would make sense to talk about people like me, people
Yeah.
that are over the age of 60 that are continuing to do phenomenal
Amazing
things.
things,
Yeah,
phenomenal
and
things.
they have wonderful life stories, backstories that led them there.
Mhm.
And I knew immediately I didn't want it to be a celebrity. Like I didn't, people started saying, oh, you should call Oprah. I'm like, no, Oprah's out there. People know
Yeah.
about her. They've heard her story. I want to talk about the everyday woman,
Yep.
the woman that you would walk past on the street and not notice them at all. They've become invisible in the media because they're a certain age. So, and there's some positives to that. I like being a little bit invisible because I can be louder and just do whatever the heck I want to do, and nobody quite sees
I
it.
told you you're a
Um,
badass.
so it just made sense. Why don't
It
I do
made
stories?
sense. It made
Yeah,
sense. So, how many
yeah.
women do you focus on in this film, Beyond 60?
In the film, there are 9 women from all around the
Hmm.
country with completely different stories, but they talk about their resilience and they talk about why they're still relevant and what they're doing and what their plans are after what it is that they're doing now. And some
Yeah.
of them were as old as 87,
Yeah,
so
it was so great. I mean, since I'm so focused on this age group and so focused on really life after 50, now life after 60, and all its different aspects and the richness of it all, it was very intriguing to me, of course, that you focused on women over 60 in your first film.
yeah.
And like I said, it is an excellent film. How did you find these women? What was your creative process?
Well, the creative process was how am I going to find the women? And
Yeah, and
I
how did you do
started
that?
cold calls. I started calling everybody I knew. If you know anybody with an interesting story, just So in that year, while it was probably about a 9-month period, I talked to almost 100 women on the telephone. So
Hmm.
I would call them and I'd listen to their story. I would tell them what I was doing, ask them if they were interested. But I focused I kept coming back to the same 9 as my favorite picks for a host of different reasons, but it just worked. And they, each one of the people that I asked, they knew that I was a new filmmaker. They knew that I didn't know really what I was doing, but they all said yes. And I thought, to me, that was incredible. That was women supporting women,
Yes.
older women supporting older women, and women who just have this understanding that stories can help change the world.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting process to find them.
Yeah, they're just all wonderful. Each woman is unique. Now, you transitioned from the corporate world, as you explained, to filmmaking, and even though you did explain how storytelling has been a part of your life and your work for decades, but still, this is an entirely different medium. Was
Mhm.
it challenging for you? And did
Absolutely.
you have mentors? Like, how did you actually figure it out? Did you go to a class in
No,
filmmaking while,
no,
in the evening after you were done working at your company?
no,
How
no.
did this
I did.
happen? Give
I
us some
wanted to
insight.
fast track it. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
about going to school, but I thought, well, once again, that's going to just take up more time. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wanted
You
to
had to
just
get
get
to
in.
it.
Yes, I wanted to get in the nitty gritty.
Right.
So I'm a builder of operations. I've done it. I know what it takes to build something that I don't know much about. And the thing of it is, you just need to find people who are smarter than you are. And you need to surround yourself. I always did that in business throughout my careers, is bring in people that are smarter than I am so that we have a well-rounded group of individuals that can move forward and, develop whatever it is we need to develop. So I started reaching out to people in the film world in the Philadelphia area. And I was asking to be introduced to a production company that may be interested in hearing what I have to say. So I was introduced to this young woman's, at the time, boyfriend, now husband. And she said, well, he is part owner in a production company in Philly. I'm sure that he'll meet with you and probably tell you where you should be going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that was the beginning. And he and his partners liked the idea of Beyond 60 so much that they said, well, why don't we do it with you? We have the cameras, we have the sound, we have all of that expertise, and you are the, producer, director person that's coming in with this idea. We will work together. So that's what we did for almost 3 years. That's how long it took from the very
That's how long it
beginning to
took.
the
Three
very end.
years.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the crew, we put this crew together, and they would come with me wherever we were going to film the individual women. And then we would come back, and I'd sit with the editor and do the editing. And we just, back and forth until we got the whole thing stitched together. And so they were truly, these young people in their late 20s into their mid 30s were my mentors, showing me the ropes.
Showing you
You
the rope.
can't
But
do this.
you're right what you said. You understood what it takes to really pull together a group, to really go from one point to another. I mean, you've done this in your previous work life. So
Yes.
you were uniquely qualified to take this step and
Yeah.
make this pivot. You really were.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
suppose. I mean, it is an
Still
interesting thing
challenging, of course.
of course. But I
Tell me
mean,
something. I want to know. I want to picture
yeah.
this. Where did that film premiere? Was there a premiere? And what did you feel like
Oh, Beyond
when it
60.
premiered? Tell us about that moment,
It
about that evening,
premiered
whatever it was.
in Los Angeles at the Los Angeles Women's International Film Festival. And that was the premiere. And so I flew out there, and I was a little, honestly, I felt nauseous the day before because I had never seen this film on a jumbo screen inside of a
Oh
movie theater.
my gosh.
And when I got into the movie theater that next day and I looked and I was like, oh my God, how is this? Is it really going to work? You know, the editors kept it, don't worry about it. It'll all fit. I said, are you sure? You know, I'd seen it on a pretty big screen, but not like in a movie
Not like
theater.
this.
So lots of people that I knew from LA, because I actually had an office in LA for 10 years, came, people that I hadn't seen in a long time, came to support me. You know, people that were just at the festival. There were just all these people sitting in this auditorium seating for the film. And a couple of them called me back and said, come sit with us. And honest to God, I couldn't do it. I had to go down front and sit by myself
I
and wait
understand.
for this to happen.
Yes,
And
you
and I
needed the
remember
space around you to really
I,
process what was going on.
I did.
Completely understandable.
Yeah,
Big
it was
moment.
wild. It was really wild. And then when people laughed when I thought they should laugh, or if you heard a oh or whatever, people were doing that. So I thought, oh, they're getting it. They're taking in the stories and they're, you know, they like it. And so then there was a standing ovation and you know,
Oh,
and that was
yay.
that.
I'm giving you an
Yeah.
ovation now. Yay.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was so, I was getting all excited just listening to you
Yeah.
retell that moment in
I can
time.
still feel
What
it.
a feat. You can, of course you can,
Yeah, I can
and
still
I'm
feel it.
like living vicariously right now through you. All right. I want to talk for a minute about people listening in right now might be saying, I want to do that too. I've been working in the same job for decades. Love it,
Yes.
love it, love it. But hey, I'm 65 or I'm 50, whatever it is. And I still have this other thing I want to do. Maybe it's clear to the people listening. Maybe it's like in the beginning for you, it wasn't so
Right.
clear. Maybe it's the saxophone. Maybe it's the
Right.
book. We don't know. You ended up figuring that out, which is wonderful. But what tips do you want to give to people, women in midlife, who really
Mhm.
want to pursue this dream? What tips
I,
do you want to give them?
you know, the first thing is make a list. I think everybody should always have a list that is ongoing and you can cross things off as time goes on.
That's
But
what I do.
to focus in on the two things maybe that are the most intriguing to you. And then once you figure that out, reach out to people. Reach out to somebody like me who's done it. There are a ton of people who have done this already, who have switched careers, midlife, whatever,
Hmm.
to try something new. And everybody has a different system for doing that. But getting the support of somebody who might be able to introduce you to someone else is big, is really big.
Yeah.
So there are so many coaches out there and life coaches, people that will Reveal Talks is a group that a friend of mine is working with. And she set up this program where she goes in and just talks real short Reveal Talks to figure out what it is that you need to focus on and where you might need to go. So there are people out there like that can help you
Kind of
just dig
shape that
in deep.
dream so that you can really
Yes,
dig in deep. And also, I want to point out that I think a critical key is to be fearless because let's say you
yes,
have a great idea, whether it's for something creative like a movie or a book or a new business or a not for
yes.
profit, you fill in the blank. But if you're fearful, you
Mhm.
won't take the next step. You'll stop
Right.
right there. I kind of had that experience when I was also in the corporate world. And then I turned 50 and I had my aha moment, had gone through menopause and the like. And I said, I need a book for this. So I went out to try to find that book. And that book at that time did not exist.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, I'm going to write that book. Now, what did I know about writing a book? I
Right.
could have been too afraid and said to myself, hey, who's going to want to listen to me? I
Right.
don't know anything about writing a book, and anyway, I didn't let that happen. Lucky for me, I continued on the path and what became fearless. And
Hmm.
I think I really encourage all of you listening in
Yeah.
to add that element to your kind of, toolkit as well.
Right. Because fear is real. I mean,
Fear is real.
we all fear things. I mean,
Yeah.
was I fearful? Sure. I was a little fearful, but not as fearful as maybe I would have been 40 years ago. Because I have already tried things and failed at things over and
Yes,
over and
as
over in my
we
life.
all have, and that's a
Right.
good thing, actually.
Yes,
All the
absolutely.
experts say it's a good thing if you've tried and you have failed. You've learned, hopefully.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And it's always, every time I failed, and when I say fail, I mean I tried to put something together, it didn't work. So I had to go back and regroup. But and that happens over and over in your life. If you look back at the times that, gee whiz, that didn't work out, but I learned from it. So the next time I did something similar to that, I started at point B instead of point A because it worked better.
Right.
And fear is something that you can manage. And fear is a good thing to test on a regular basis. When you get that pit in your stomach and you're like, oh, this is really scary, but I'm going to do it anyway because I really do believe I'm not going to die and I will get to the other side. And when you do come through the other side, you're like, oh, why was I so nervous about that? But
Yeah,
it's
and a
it's
little
just
mind
part of
trick for
life.
me too is like, what's the worst that could happen? And very
Exactly.
often it's like, you're right, you're not going to die. The
Right.
worst that could happen is somebody said, maybe the person you're trying to sell your idea to or get published or whatever, the person says no. And
Right.
then you just find
The
another
next
way
person.
in.
Yeah.
Yes. And you just keep on
And the
going.
no's get
It's
easier.
critical.
Yeah. But people need to reach out to other people for support.
Yes.
Um, and there's so many women offering that type of service, or maybe it's just a friend. It
Yeah.
depends upon, who your friend group is. You can get a lot out of just sitting down and talking with someone, and they give you one simple idea that you haven't thought of.
Yeah.
And that simple idea can be the opening for what
Yeah.
it is
I
that you
call that
want
my
to do.
kitchen cabinet.
There.
It's my group of women friends, my kitchen cabinet, who I, will kind of throw things out at them. And I
Yeah.
certainly did that in the beginning with different
Yes.
ideas. And it really helped me a great deal to go in the
Yeah.
right direction, take the
Yeah.
right path. Now, you just came out with a second
I
film, a
did.
second documentary. Tell us about that, Climbing into Life. Tell us about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I finished it March 30th. We finished editing and
Congratulations.
got it. Thank you. Thank you. That took a year and 11 months. So I'm getting shorter in the
Yes.
time it takes to do it, which is a good
you're,
thing.
you're more of a pro now.
And
You're
this
not a
time
rookie anymore.
right, I did not bring on a production company. I just hired people as I needed them. And this film is unusual. The woman is incredible. Her name is Dierdre Wolownick, and she is the oldest woman to climb El Capitan in Yosemite National Park. And there's all kinds of backstories, but the big one is her son is Alex Honnold, who was in the film Free Solo, done by
Loved
National.
that film. I
Just
absolutely loved that film.
wasn't it amazing?
Amazing. I remember
Amazing.
watching it. I remember watching, like I couldn't even sit. I had to
I know.
stand,
I know.
toward the end. I couldn't sit. I was like
Oh,
so
I
nervous.
know. You're just
Fabulous.
so this is his mother, and she was never an
Amazing.
athlete, never until she was
Wow.
60, never. So everything she did was academic. She's incredible, like totally incredible. She's a painter, artist. She is a musician. She plays, I don't know how many instruments, six. She is a writer. She's published many books. She's a professor. She's unbelievable. And then the
And she's
story
how
is
old, Melissa?
she's now 72.
72.
Yeah.
Wow.
But she was watching her son do all these crazy things, and she was a little concerned, and she felt a little bit of distance between them and wanted to know what he was doing. So she said, "Could you show me how this climbing stuff works?" So he took her to a climbing gym and she got the bug. And now she's the oldest woman to climb El Cap. And I got to go out there to Yosemite with her, and hired a climbing videographer to go up with her. And it was just fantastic. And then we spent the rest of the time in her home doing her, the early part of her life story, which is just fascinating.
I have
So,
not yet seen that movie. Tell
yeah.
tell us, where can the audience see both of these movies?
Okay. Beyond 60 is easy to get. It's streaming on almost every streaming channel. except for Netflix. So you can just go in and put it in the search bar, Beyond 60, spell out 60, and you'll be able to get it there. Climbing into Life is just finished, and we're just submitting to film festivals. So it's been submitted, and we're waiting on those that will accept it, and that's where it will premiere, at one of these film festivals. So if people stay in touch with me, they can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And
Of course, and everyone, of course, I will have all of that information and your website and how they can follow you and connect with you, and certainly information about both movies in the show notes. Easy, just click and you'll get to where you want to go.
That's
all that
awesome.
information will be there.
So that'll
Yes.
be, first in film festivals. And then, while I'm doing that, I'm looking for distribution the same way that I distributed Beyond 60.
I wonder if this will be an easier path for you because you already have a great movie under your belt.
I hope so. But the business has gotten a little tough.
Every business has gotten a little tough, but yes.
Yeah. Independent filmmakers are everywhere now, and great films are being made by thousands of them. And it's harder and harder to get good distribution deals. But, I imagine
but
it
you're
will be
fearless.
a little easier.
You're fearless and you're a badass. So you're going to make this happen, no question. So
It'll
looking
happen.
ahead, what are you thinking? Like, all right, you have two. Now you're going to start doing another one. Maybe you already have. What are some future projects that you're thinking about? Can you share that?
I am seriously interested in writing a book. So that's sort of simmering, and I'm writing down notes in a journal about that. But I'm also thinking about doing a series of short films around women at work. And so I'm playing with that idea right now. And I have this picture in my head of close-ups of their hands doing whatever it is that they do. Say they're a surgeon, or say they bake bread or whatever, but their hands doing what they do and talking about their work, and then talking about their age and why they're still working.
So it sounds like you want to stay in the world, the space of midlife women. It sounds like going forward. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yay, we want to keep you in this space right here, Melissa.
Yeah.
So, this was such a great conversation. You truly are amazing, so inspirational, motivational. Thank you for sharing your creative process and how you got from point A to point B. So appreciate that. And before we let you go and before we wind down this conversation, are there any takeaways you want to make sure that the Age Better audience remembers from this chat today?
I want people to always take detours. I want people to think about how they operate in their day-to-day life. And are they the kind of person that always goes to the same restaurant, or always goes to the same store, or always drives to work the same way? I am a strong proponent of taking detours and taking a look at what's around that bend that you come to, because honestly, it can change your life. It can change your thinking. It can just change the way you operate, and it can put you in a space that opens you up to think about what you want to be doing next, and not feeling like you're stuck on a path and that this is my only path. It might be a good path. I've been on them, and it might be a great path, but there are other paths out there for you. And if you don't take any detours, you might not find them.
Thank you for that. Very inspirational. Melissa, thank you for joining me today. And I hope you'll be back to talk about all the successes for your next film and then whatever you're working on after that. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.